Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. I'm Larry Sashin, and today we have a fantastic panel to discuss the country is going to pot. Will food service follow? Before we start, let's go around the room. Harrison, why don't you start?
Hi, good morning. I'm Harrison Wise, founder and CEO of Wise Collective. We're an integrated marketing communications agency servicing not only the cannabis industry, but certainly the cannabis industry since 2015, but also tech, sports, media, and entertainment. And I'm also the founder and publisher of The Bluntness, a digital media and marketing platform covering the intersection of cannabis and psychedelic community, culture, and commerce.
Okay. Miguel.
Morning, everybody. My name is Miguel Trinidad. I'm one of the founders of 99th Floor. We are a cannabis fine dining experience based in New York City.
Thank you, Miguel. And Mike.
Which Mike? Me, Mike?
Yep.
You, Mike.
So my name is Hawaii Mike. I'm the founder of Chef for Hire. We're a lifestyle company founded in NY and cultivated for this moment in the medicinal plant movement. We use the universal language of food to normalize the use of cannabinoids as an essential for optimal human health and holistic well-being.
Thank you, Mike. And Fred.
Good morning. I'm Fred Clashman. I'm the editor and publisher of Total Food Service. Looking forward to a great session.
Yes, it will be a great session. You know, pot was a mainstay for college students in the late 60s, early 70s. It was something that was kept in one of your dad's old cigar boxes, either under the bed or in a closet. And recently, with the legalization of marijuana and the interest in expanding marijuana throughout the country, it has found its way into the kitchen. Now, we had brownies. We made pot or hash brownies, but it was a toss-up whether you had a brownie with nothing in it or a brownie that put you to sleep for 4 weeks. So how did we get from in a cigar box under a bed to cutting edge culinary? Why don't you start, Harrison, and tell me how you decided that this was a place you were going to move your agency?
Sure. I'll start with the first question of sort of how did we get here? It took a lot of advocacy and fighting to really chip away at not only the stigma, but the illegal nature of
this is about food
stigmatization that existed in the U.S.
1 second, audience, please mute your mics. Okay, Harrison, continue.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of advocacy. I mean, a lot of people have really pushed the legalization movement forward here in the U.S. And that's really the catalyst for a lot of the dominoes falling across the country, state by state. Unfortunately, it's still federally illegal, so there's still a long way for us to go, but we've definitely made a lot of strides and progress in that regard. And a lot of the folks that are on the panel here today are certainly at the forefront of continuing to create experiences that further normalize the plant. And we're a debt of gratitude goes to them and others who have certainly taken the mantle and moved the industry forward. And in terms of myself, my agency, got into the cannabis arena in 2015. We were doing some agricultural tech, PR and communications. We launched a food innovation festival called Food Bites, and brought that from San Francisco to New York, Colorado, eventually London. And, food innovation, whether it's specifically related to cannabis or not, there's a lot of synergies and sort of correlated technologies, automation, vertical farming, things like that certainly contribute to the food supply, but also, had some benefits for the cannabis industry and relevance to the cannabis industry. And that was our foot in the door in the cannabis space. We came into contact with a number of cannabis businesses in California, predominantly right ahead of Prop 64. And one of those businesses was MedMen. And that was our entry into the cannabis space. Our agency launched MedMen in 2015 and worked with them through 2018. And that was the foundation for our cannabis practice. And then in 2018, as we were, 2-3 years into the cannabis space, saw an opportunity to launch an owned and operated digital media marketing platform. And that's when we launched The Bluntness. And, we as we covered the industry and brought, information and education and resources to consumers by talking to people like Miguel and Hawaii Mike on the call today, the people who are moving the industry forward, we were bringing that expertise to the table, and communicating the things that these folks were doing in the space. And we saw that, cooking content was some of the content that was just being engaged with, shared, liked. People were really interested in it and wanting more. And I think part of it is just a decision for them to, integrate cannabis into their health and wellness, how they want to, live a more, stable life from a mental health perspective, and really just start to integrate cannabis in a safe and healthy way. And that was just really an eye opener. And we started talking more and more to folks like Hawaii Mike and Miguel and others across the country who are, again, further normalizing the plant in really interesting and innovative ways.
Thank you. Thank you. Hawaii Mike, 2 questions. Number 1, that's an interesting first name your parents gave you, Hawaii. How did that come about? And the second thing is, when you first started cooking, cannabis cooking couldn't have been forefront in your mind. How did you move to cannabis?
So my name is just a nickname. I was raised in Hawaii. My mom, took me there when I was 5 and was actually working with growers. So I was kind of born into a family that's kind of really normalized cannabis and used it within the community. And it was never a demonized thing to us. It was always about health and wellness and just overall well-being. And then how did I get into cooking with cannabis? So my first job was a prep cook, but I've never cooked professionally in my life. I was in the music industry for a long time. I was in publishing and magazines, and then as well in talent management. But cannabis was always there with me. I was selling weed as a young kid and got an offer for an internship. So I was selling weed at a music convention. So I ended up here in New York. So when legalization happened in California, in Colorado and Washington State, people started looking at me like, what are you going to do? And I actually met somebody that was cooking with cannabis. We got close and then started working together. It didn't work out. And I kind of got the bug. So I'm kind of self-taught in this. I went through this and just kind of figured it out day by day and started throwing a supper club in August 2015. We ran that monthly up until the pandemic, 56 months in a row. And it's just kind of been one of those things that became my alchemy. It's something that over time and with a lot of practice and a lot of messing up, I've just learned, and we've really dialed in on responsible consumption through proper dosing. I look at this as the future of consumption. I think it's much easier to control your dosage, to control the effects of cannabis through ingesting it versus smoking. The effects are much different. And once you understand, where you're at and how to consume, it's great, because smoking, you're like up and down constantly. I think this provides a much more stable, balanced feeling.
Okay, so Miguel, why does the world need cannabis cooking? Is it another flavor level, or is it just another experience?
Well, a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. When it comes to, am I muted?
No, you're good.
When it comes to consuming cannabis, to echo what Mike was saying, responsible dosing is extremely important. There's a lot of people out there in this community who don't want to consume alcohol, and cannabis has been a way to relax, control pain, control anxiety, control all sorts of ailments. When it comes to combining with food, growing up, we, just like you, had brownies and Rice Krispie treats and all these confectionaries that were being consumed to get an effect that wasn't controlled. Now, in this day and age, you have chefs like Mike and myself who are doing this on a different level. We're trying to elevate it. Oh, well, we're not trying. We actually are elevating it. And you're going to see edibles in a fine dining aspect. You can have a burger, you can have scallops, you can have chicken that can be infused, and understanding the proper dosage and the terpene profile to get the desired effect really has piqued a lot of interest in consumers.
Okay, we keep talking about the health aspect. Explain the health aspect of ingesting as opposed to smoking.
I'll hop in. Well, for the health aspect, I mean, all human beings, every mammal with a vertebrae has an endocannabinoid system, a system of receptors throughout their body, which, uses the benefits of the cannabinoids to really look for homeostasis, for our internal systems. And it affects so many of our different systems, from our motor skills, right? You may, be impaired, you may feel good and relaxed. And, it's about balance for us, right? And that's all this system wants to do. And if what cannabinoids do is feed that system and help to activate it, then ingesting it will go through your liver system, which hits your CB2 receptor, and then again provides these benefits in a much different way. So, depending how you consume it, what the carrier is, depending upon the oils and different things like that, the success rate of the absorption of the cannabinoids will differ. But smoking, you waste so much because it's literally just burning while it's there. How much you actually inhale when you ingest the smoke is different every time. And so it's not as precise when you eat a whole meal. And again, it has to be dosed properly. It can't just be kind of all over the place. It's just a different, much easier, and like I said, balanced experience from what I've seen in the past.
We keep talking about dosing. With every other drug, everybody metabolizes drugs different ways. So if you have 20 people, you have 20 different types of, or 10 different metabolism speeds at your dinner. So how do you dose correctly, and how do you avoid something like the old movie of Where's Papa, where, Ruth Gordon falls asleep in the mashed potatoes?
Right. Well, let me jump in on that one. When it comes to dosing, microdosing has been the way that we do things. Reason being is because you don't want people to have that onset of panic. You want people to be in a comfortable environment and where that is controlled. So everybody metabolizes things differently. So understanding the terpenes that you're using can control the experience that this person is going to receive. All right. You want to make sure that they're in a comfortable environment. You also want to make sure that the food that you're pairing with the cannabinoids has a certain absorption rate. So it's not going to just hit them right away. It's not like eating a 25 milligram gummy as opposed to a 25 milligram 5-course meal. The body is going to process the food differently. It's going to slow the process down. The absorption rate is going to be slowed down. So everybody's going to be in a comfortable space.
Yeah. And I'll hop in on this one too. So the other part about the dosing that I found, again, so if you have 20 people at the dinner, like you said, everybody's different. Food and eating is very interesting because it's a full sensory experience. We use all 5 of our senses every single time we eat, plus our 6 senses of anticipation and memory. So it's an energy exchange, right? Food is energy, it's fuel. There's energy in everything we do, from cooking the food to eating the food. So for us, it's really the intentions behind where we even start this whole thing that help us guide it, right? And so we started calling our supper clubs flights because we wanted trust. Trust is one of the biggest things that we've seen that kind of change the experience for people. Once people trust you, they settle into the moment and the energy is just completely different. So we call them flights because if you get on an airplane, how often do you know the pilot? Like probably never, right? But as soon as that cabin door closes, that person's going to take you, that stranger is going to take you 37,000 feet in the air, and you trust them to get to your destination safely. So that's the same thing. I'm your captain, Hawaii Mike. Welcome to Flight 111. And we really run it that way because, again, this is about energy. This is about an experience. This is about a moment. And we want everybody to feel and vibrate as one, right? This is like a dinner table with all your favorite people that you want to be with. And then you get to go on this place, this space, this flight all together. And so, again, it's really kind of directing the energy as well as all the things aforementioned.
And the only thing I would add to that is, in terms of like some people who may get too high from the experience that, I think chefs like Miguel and Hawaii Mike are also aware of the benefits of CBD. Not everything is always going to be THC centric. You could also incorporate CBD in maybe like midway through the meal as well to sort of level things out. And that's an experience that I've seen and have had before as well, just to kind of to my point, you know, we're trusting the chef to kind of guide us through this experience, and part of that is incorporating CBD as well as THC into that experience in order to sort of control that experience.
And
Okay.
let's be honest, I'll speak for myself. Like in the beginning of this, we were knocking people out. Like it's just like because we had to figure it out, right?
Right.
There was, I'm talking almost 10 years ago right now. And there wasn't a lot of, people doing that you could speak to about it. So it was all my friends were the guinea pigs. They enjoyed it, but trust, a lot of them were laid out. Like in the
A lot of
beginning.
people slept over.
Yeah, it took a long time to kind of really dial everything in and find that groove. And then even like Miguel was saying, once you start to understand terpene profiles that are even in the food and how they mix with the cannabinoids, and then you have to switch that up depending upon, the meal and how long you think it may metabolize for people. Things that take longer to digest. If you have all of that throughout the meal, it's going to create a different experience than you have things that are faster through your system. So
I have a question.
Yep.
Does cannabis mean the end of a beer and wine list? Does it mean the end? Because alcohol and the profit from alcohol is a huge part of how an operator makes a living.
Yep.
So where does this fit with running the business, if you will?
Well, I'm actually glad you said that. I think that if we figure out a way to legalize this within restaurants, like it gives people an opportunity to like create a different margin, right? Me personally, I don't drink alcohol anymore. So even in our restaurants and when we cook, like there's not alcohol there unless it's by request by certain people. But I think there's a huge opportunity for restaurants because margins in the restaurant industry aren't huge, and alcohol is a big part of how people keep their lights on. But this could do the same thing for that. And I don't think it's one takes away from the other. I think they all can coexist because they have been. Like we have to be honest about this. Cannabis isn't new. Cannabis was around before alcohol.
Okay,
is,
but hold on a second.
Yep.
But structurally, there's an issue, which is the way the law is being set up now.
Oh yeah.
I don't think you're going to see somebody who has a license from the state liquor authority. They're going to have a very difficult time also getting a second license for cannabis.
Yeah, I don't think you can. You
Okay,
won't be able to get both.
that's an issue.
Yeah.
It is an issue, but yet we are still in the infancy stage of all this licensing. The reason that licenses won't be given out for both cannabis and alcohol is because the agencies are basing everything on fear instead of fact and science. When you have people who are skilled and educated on how to properly dose and how to introduce cannabis, then you have a more controlled system. These people like myself and Mike, we have SOPs. We can train these agencies to understand how to police these things in order to have control over it. But right now, there's a lot of fear surrounding cannabis. And it's going to be a while before we get there, but eventually we will.
And that's one of the biggest problems in this industry. And Miguel, you bring up a great point. It's overregulated, and it's really gonna, I think stifle a lot of innovation. I mean, a lot of it's happening sort of off book or sort of clandestinely, but it's overregulated. And to your point, Fred, as well, it's really what's going to hold the industry back.
Shelley Poole, unmute yourself, please.
Shelby.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Shelley.
Hi, Shelby. How you
Shelby.
doing?
Oh, Shelby. Okay. I need
Did I
new
spell my
glasses.
name wrong? It's okay.
No, I no, my eyes spelled your name wrong. Shelby.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks for coming.
This conversation.
Okay, please. You said this subject is your mission at the New York State Restaurant Association. How is that, and what are you doing to make this more accessible?
Well, first of all, I'm on this call, which was a no-brainer. So thank you for hosting it. And I think that this is where the conversations that matter are going to take place. So I'm extremely vocal on the board about creating a relationship with the Office of Cannabis Management, which was really spun off of the Liquor Authority. So, we don't hear that very often, that the two organizations are kind of like living, breathing beings together. and they're not being treated as such, but really like desegregating this as quickly as possible, cannabis and alcohol is really important. So the first thing I'm doing is integrating cannabis into any restaurant or bar that is willing to talk about the culture of it, and allow consumption of people's own products publicly. So that's the first thing I'm doing. And then most importantly, it's, talking to the board about how we're going to integrate restaurants into the consumption lounge license, and be really vocal about that, because that's really where the opportunity lies. I think people are looking at consumption lounges as something where it's going to be cannabis only, but like food and non-alcoholic bev is also going to be involved in that. So, just making sure that there are clear lines where restaurants and bars and coffee shops and things like that can have opportunities as well to provide consumption of cannabis.
So how is that being received by the state?
Not, I mean, to be expected, I suppose. I think that there is absolute interest. They're talking about, it's myself and actually somebody else on the board with me is a current card license holder. So he's opening a dispensary and is a restaurant owner. So there are people that are on the side of making this happen. And we're really loud. So I'm hoping that this, while this is in its infancy, that the restaurant space is someplace that it's being intermingled with the whole conversation of cannabis. There are people working for it.
So Phil Frederick, please unmute yourself. You there, Phil? Okay. I guess he's not at his phone. So let me ask you a question now. Now that we're on the operational side of cannabis, how does this work? Do people, when they come to your place for a cannabis dinner, do they have to bring cash with them? How do you work this? How is is there tax added to their meal? How is the mechanics of something like this worked without trying to get yourself arrested?
Good question.
Go ahead, Miguel.
It's a membership. We invite our members. Everybody on our list has become a member, and we invite our members to our dinners, and there is no cash exchange. So it's a funny subject because we're still in the place that it hasn't been regulated, and the OCM has been friendly to us and allow us to do what we're doing, as long as we don't go crazy and embarrass them, which quote unquote is what they said. So you come to our dinners, and it's by invite only. It's not open to the public. You have to know somebody in order to get in. There's a screening process. We want to make sure that people who come are like-minded and part of the community, and we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
So does crazy and embarrass them? What does that mean?
I would assume, just like these trucks that were parked on Times Square and we're just selling cannabis, things like that are just a slap in the face of the OCM.
Got it.
We're not out there.
So illegal retailing of cannabis, if you will. Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
In a sense, like this, we're in such a great area, right? And so, again, being somebody who's been in this space for basically their whole life, and advocating and pushing forward for legalization and doing all the trips to Albany and dealing with the OCM as they were, being created, we have to kind of toe this fine line, right? We're kind of on both sides, right? We're kind of still stuck in the space of we don't have licenses, we can't operate, but we're also advocating, pushing forward for legalization, getting in front of everything. So basically what they're saying is, since we have these relationships with them, don't do anything too crazy, to make them look bad, like you just got people Wild West out there. But at the same time, keep doing what you're doing, because without the information, without the knowledge and experience that you guys can share, we can't move forward, right?
Any idea, out of curiosity, any idea what the potential tax revenue is to the state for legalization? Like how much has Colorado brought in? What's it meant?
Yeah, Harrison probably knows more than that.
No.
I know.
Yeah, actually, I might have an article up on the bluntness about it. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but pretty considerable. You know, most states that have legalized are seeing pretty decent tax revenues from from cannabis specifically.
The issue, though, I will say this, is with all of the tax structures in pretty much every state, they're way too high.
Yeah,
they're not
sure.
sustainable. I mean,
Absolutely.
Prop 64 in California is crumbling right now. The interesting one to look at in my mind is Maryland. Maryland's tax is the same excise tax that you have on cigarettes and alcohol, right? Which is a much fairer.
So a standard sin tax, if you will.
Yeah, standard sin tax, exactly, right?
And
Whereas
an ultra
New York has
sin tax.
potency tax. New York has there's so many layers.
there's
of
so many
taxes.
extra taxes.
It's
And
obnoxious.
so what
yeah.
happens is it makes it very difficult for you not to just sustain, but to be able to scale, right? And truly build an operation that can, be here for the future. So everybody right now is positioning, is marketing, is branding, is trying to hold on and be in that space to hopefully they'll all figure this out. And hopefully it won't take federal legalization for them to figure out proper tax structures. But again, what do I know? I'm not a politician. They know everything.
Yeah.
But I think speaking about the gray area, though, I think folks like Miguel and Hawaii Mike and others are really demonstrating a path forward for folks like Shelby, who are, going to have to create regulations and a process and sort of a path forward. So, being able to demonstrate that this can work and that there are models that exist that can be scaled and rolled out is very important, I think. And it's also a testament to just how New Yorkers do things, right? We're always going to make a way. We're going to, do it our way. And I think there's a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship happening in the cannabis category, and specifically with the intersection of cannabis and food.
Okay. So, back on the business end, can you, some people may not know the regulations and the limitations you have. You can't shop. You can't order something from another state. Can you talk about that a bit? How you're limited to just New York State?
Well, all right. I guess the access is kind of like that in every state, right?
Yes.
And when, if you're operating in the legal market, you're only supposed to cultivate, manufacture, process, distribute products from that state. So I can speak on it from the side of, being one of the first legacy operators. I think we're the first legacy edibles brand to hit the shelves in New York. And, for us, it was a challenge because there's actually no licenses, right? So the way we had to get in was to white label, to take our SOPs to a processing company, a processing manufacturer, and work with them to get our products in. And again, yes, you have to use, we've only had really one real crop here in New York, which is wild because everything has to be grown outdoors. So what's still being sold right now, there's a couple of people at the greenhouse, is all crop from October, right, of last year. So again, these restrictions of only being in the state, and I actually told, the OCM, I was like, you might sound crazy saying this, not as crazy as the mayor saying we should grow weed on, public housing, which is federally funded. But the fact that if New York and California can't work together, this will not work. And that's why we're seeing 1,500 plus illegal shops in New York right now, because they all have out-of-state product, because that's what the consumers want. You have to remember, especially in a state like New York, or in a city like New York City, we're the capital of the world. We have access to everything. If it's out, it's in New York. You know what I'm saying? If people use it, it's in New York. If it's a substance, it's in New York. It just doesn't matter. So to tell the consumer they can only have cannabis from New York State that's like cutting off your supply. And so it really restricts us, and we have to push for this federal legalization for this to work, because all the states really have to work together.
So back to the crops.
Mm-hmm.
So you said everything is grown out only outside, or must be grown outside?
So in New York State, the law states that you can only grow outdoor or greenhouse now, right? But outdoor was the first crop. Now they're allowing greenhouse. They're going to move into mixed light. And then hopefully by the end of the year, when they start putting out the licenses, that's when the actual indoor licenses will come out. But then it's going to take about 18 months from the people to actually get licensed to be set up and have their actual first crops be able to go into the shops. So now we're already moving into 2025, right? So how do you combat the illegal nature when the illicit side of the unlicensed shops, when they have products from pretty much every state that people, consume?
All right. So, we've had a rash of miserable weather. It's hot, it's raining, it's flooding. What is that doing to the current crop?
That I'm not sure. I don't know what the weather right now, this imminent weather we've been having is doing. But I know a lot of people are starting to move the greenhouse. So hopefully that's not going to be as much of an issue, right? But again, we are in New York State, and New York State is not known for the soil and cannabis to be grown in. There's just not a lot of, research done or people growing outdoors. So we don't know how good, who knows? It might be incredible, that one crop we get in the summer. But it's also the temperature, the weather. It's like, there's so many different things that go into growing and cultivation that I don't know. It's all, time will tell.
Okay. All right. Fred, how do you see this moving? How can this move to Main Street? And Shelby, you might be able to answer this also. How do we get this? How do we section off an area of a restaurant where it's, what is it? Is it 18 or 21 and over? Which is it?
21.
How did we get a section off a restaurant? Because you can't serve it at a table where there's kids, where there's teenagers, because we all know parents share. What is the mechanics of doing this?
Well, it's really it's a little more complicated than saying parents share, because we allow children at tables with alcohol. Yes. So I really do I come from the restaurant industry and moved into the beer space about 12 years ago. So, I have raised my children in an environment that is breweries and wineries and bars and restaurants. And I'm now continuing to raise my children in a space that has cannabis in it. And obviously I've gotten reactions from parents, and my children probably aren't invited to a lot of birthday parties that they would otherwise be invited to. But I think continuing to simply treat it normally and simply just put our heads down and act normal, so to speak. We have to remember that there's no Budweiser of cannabis yet. There's no Yellow Jacket of cannabis yet. So these are all, I think Mike said, this industry is in its infancy. So really talking about regulation and talking about any of these, ways of working, this is all being worked out in real time. So this is a conversation that's happening now. I threw an event in my own town this week, and my post got taken down off of Facebook, and literally my business, I couldn't be more mainstream. I'm literally trying to attract the soccer mom. That's where I'm at right now. And that's the conversation that I'm actively having with people. And soccer moms are freaking the fuck out, to be honest. They're not okay. And there are a lot of we started this conversation about wellness and about about your health, and that's what this conversation really is about. It's about healthy alternatives. It's about functional use, and people just want to close their ears because this is something that has been pushed aside, and the people on the fringes are on the fringes for a reason in this situation. So there's a more systemic conversation that needs to happen. So the most important thing is literally just treating it normally. Know that the cops are not coming, because where you can smoke a cigarette, you can smoke a joint. And, when a child looks at you, you say, this is for someone who's over 21. Period. That's what you say about alcohol. I have alcohol out in my house right now. I'm not freaking out about it because I think my kids are going to go make margaritas. So, it's a process. It's going to be a while, but I also think that the most important thing is recognizing that there is no Budweiser yet, and that somebody is going to become the Budweiser, and that the most important conversations for Mike and Miguel and people like me is that it should be one of us, because Budweiser started out as a family legacy organization before like the big world took over. So, you know, these conversations are endlessly important, and, you know, Mike needs the platform that he's getting. So it's good that he's getting it.
Hey, 2 points. Number one, as a longtime soccer player and then coach, soccer moms should be ordered to smoke a joint before they come. They need to chill out a little. That's number one. Number two, Harrison, I guess you're like at the tip of the spear or something like this. So many people used cannabis from, from the time they were able to sneak it into their bedrooms. But it's always been a sneak type of thing. Now, remember, you used to walk down the streets of Manhattan, and once in a while, you get a whiff of the herb, and you look around. Okay, now you got to find a part of the street where you don't smell it, because there's always somebody smoking here. But really, how are people like you, who are the promoters of this, and Miguel and Mike, you can pipe in too, what is the path to normalization? How do we get people to understand that this is just another herb?
Yeah, it's education. At the end of the day, it's education and awareness building, and continuing to do the things that we're talking about here, normalizing it in all the environments that we're familiar with, from brunch to dinner to soccer practices and games and whatnot. And, I mean, there's literally, a very long stretch of being marginalized because of this plant, and the stigma is very real, and it's entrenched in our society. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but it's happening. And, it's really, it's really going to continue to evolve. Beverages, infused beverages are a category that's really going to help leapfrog the normalization. Edible products outside of gummies are also going to continue to normalize. There's a company in California called Sumo Snacks that make like potato chips, like savory snacks that are infused. Again, that make it more accessible, more normal, and really allows it to integrate it into our lifestyles. And obviously everything that Miguel and Hawaii Mike and others are doing as well, in terms of the culinary aspect of it, where you can have fine dining, like legitimate fine dining experiences with with the infused meal is tremendous. And I think going to continue to really level the playing field there. To be able to take my mom to a brunch where we can have an infused beverage, an infused meal, and she's going to have to partake, but still be in that environment and have a normal experience is really clutch to continuing to normalize the plant.
Okay, Fred.
Right. And to add to that, we are destigmatizing it by, educating people properly, by normalizing it. I think that, the society has always lived in a place of fear when it comes to cannabis. It's a devil's lettuce. It always has these nasty names. But, when it comes to the actual medicine, once the medical field starts prescribing cannabis to more patients and educating people, and start taking that fear that Nancy Reagan instilled in the whole world, I think that we'll start moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. I think first and foremost, we should remember that it is medicine. I think that's first and foremost. I think the fact that we all sort of have fun with it recreationally is great. And we still derive the medical benefit, even though we're having fun with it. I think that's something that everyone universally benefits from. Are the pluses that allow doctors to prescribe it. We're all benefiting from that plant because of that. But we have to always remember first and foremost that this is medicine, and always continue to treat it with that respect.
Yes, Fred. In your you speak to with the newspaper and the digital version and the website. You're touching 125, 130,000 pairs of Foodservice eyes every month. How can I know if we speak to Peter Herrero and he'd go, not in my restaurant, not in my restaurant. How do we get people to understand that this is just another herb, and get past, it's going to be too much of a problem?
I think I have a little different take on it. I think, like anything else, distribution is what's going to drive this. So I actually think it's time to go and talk to your local Cisco house and your local US food house and have a conversation, and then go with them. If it's something that they see as on their agenda, go with them to the State Restaurant Association, and then go through the lobbying that has to be done, because this, like any other product, will not grow without proper will not be added to menus without just proper distribution.
Okay, Peter, I just mentioned your name. I see you put yourself back in the light. Talk to me. How do we get this on your menu?
I have to tell you, I am speechless, and my mind is expanding in so many different levels. The biggest challenge is, and I would caution our industry on this one, this is a social value. And I dare carefully say morality question that we want to be very careful of not to get in the crosshairs. My personal views are irrelevant, but let's just say, I think gummies have a new meaning to me in the last couple of years. And they have helped tremendously for health reasons and stress reasons and one thing or another. So that's my 2 cents on it. I think it's going to come from the state, just like alcohol. It has to be a controlled substance, because I hate to say it, for us, mature over 21 adults, I get it. I think it's great for anti-inflammatory. I'm sold. I'm done. But I got a real problem, and I apologize if I offend anyone, but I really, really do. Cherry flavored, kid flavored candies. We have to be careful here, and it's proven. So that's where I say I have no problems in the restaurant, but does it? And I know this has come up at other meetings, but how does it pay the bills? People think we make so much money on food and labor and on everything. Our Con Ed bills are incredible. Insurance. How are we going to be covered with insurance? Because I don't know if you remember our 70s drug training, but 1 drink and 1 drink equals 2. 1 drink and 1 whatever of cannabis can equal 2 or 3. And it's come up several times. It affects all of us. And I've been affected. I couldn't believe it. And I was fine. Other times I'm like, holy cow, what the hell's going on? That's dangerous if I can't plan how I'm getting to a location or not. Uber, car. If you're in the suburbs, that's really dangerous because you have to drive. As a restaurateur, okay, so before you got here, what did you have in cannabis? How's it going to react to alcohol? That's a lot to put on your local hospitality professionals. I don't know, and people won't tell you what they're having, but all of a sudden they have a bad reaction. I'm like, whoa, is it my food? Did you drink too much? Oh no, you had a gummy bear? You're leaving me out in left field.
Go ahead, Shelby.
Yeah. Okay, so I have been in the restaurant business my whole life, and one of my claims to fame is that Dina Lohan got a DWI after she left my restaurant. So she came to my restaurant.
Sorry, what's a DWI?
Like a
DUI.
about alcohol. This is a story about alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she had 1 glass of wine at my establishment and she got a DWI. So, we knew, and we had the receipts to show that this was not something that really had anything to do with us. We're in a culture of pill culture where people are taking things to amp up their drunkenness anyway, with things that are being prescribed by doctors that very specifically say don't take with alcohol. So this is essentially a sport that already exists. And I think that the conversation about, bringing cannabis into the space, we're talking about a regulated substance that we're asking to bring into the space. And microdosing is a real thing, and it's a truly effective thing. And so, Harrison, you were talking about canned beverages, and I think that and also I think Diana put in the chat about the smell of cannabis. Like, we are in the infancy of this. So as innovation happens, and we allow for responsible consumption to happen in places where you should be allowed to responsibly consume, then we're going to have products that make it that you're having 2.5 milligrams of something the same way you would have a Pilsner at the bar.
Right.
And you're going into it knowing that it's not something that you're like, I've been had, like, I'm wasted now. This is something that we're talking about having be regulated so that we can consume responsibly and not feel like lepers in a space where hospitality should be a space for everyone. Like, we come from the hospitality industry, and that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I thought that I was in the beer industry, but really I'm in hospitality, right? And so, like, making people feel welcome is my job, and cannabis has to be part of that conversation. It's legal. It's
Overconsumption in alcohol has existed in every bar, restaurant since the beginning of time. Nobody's really worried about you driving home afterwards. You could have 12 bottles, finished empty bottles on your table after a meal with friends, and no one's stopping you from getting into your car.
Totally.
And cannabis is exponentially not as dangerous as that experience. So, I think, again, the stigma is still very real. And Peter, I don't disagree with everything you're saying, but that perception and that stigma is still very real. And that's what we're trying to kind of, eliminate and really educate. And Shelby hit the nail on the head there as well. It's just normalizing this and microdosing, and people who, want to have this experience are going to show up at these venues.
Thank you. Thank you. Listen, Mike, you have your hand up, and this will be the last comment before the goodbyes.
Yeah, so I just want to, we just got to be honest about this. This is all happening already, right? It's people are smoking. You can walk outside of a bar right now while drinking alcohol. You could have 10 drinks, walk outside, smoke a joint, walk back inside. You could walk outside, you could eat an edible, you could do whatever. So the issue isn't, can this happen? The issue isn't, oh my God, everybody's going to die, because we're not right now. The issue is, we have to deprogram the rhetoric and propaganda that has been haunting us since 1937 and Reefer Madness and all the BS,
Yes.
right? We got to be honest. We're in an opioid epidemic, yet we trust a doctor who gets kickbacks every time they sell you and write you a prescription, right? Everybody's fine with that because they got a paper on their wall and the government says they're good, right? So we're just living in a space of complete ignorance, and people really have to educate themselves. Another part is, edibles and a dining experience are two completely different things, in my opinion, right? You eating an edible that's this big and it has the same amount of milligrams or even more than one of our dinners is a completely different experience. The way we metabolize is different. You got to digest all of the food. When you're just going through a quick sugar product that gets right in your system like that, and you get smacked, right? The other part is, with alcohol, there's stat after stat after stat of people dying, of accidents, of all kinds of things. Show me those stats with cannabis, right? And if you can have hatchets and hops, you can throw axes and weapons that can literally kill people, and drink all the alcohol you want.
Good example. Good example.
What can go wrong?
Like, how can you talk about things going wrong with cannabis when they're already happening under your nose, and you're just being ignorant, you're just not looking at it? So we just have to come out of these shadows. We got to be truly honest. We can do these things, right? And if we're talking about them existing together, I mean, in the South, you still have dry Sundays. You still have dry counties. You can lock your liquor up at an establishment on a Sunday and not serve it. Why can't you do that now and then serve cannabis, right? There's tons of different solutions if people are open to talking about them in a real way. We can do this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody, I would like to go on for another hour, because I'm sure we could, except some people have work. So as always, time is our enemy. And before we say goodbye, what I want to do is go around the room and, one final takeaway. Harrison, why don't you start?
Well, no, I think this is a great conversation. We're just scratching the surface here, and definitely, check out thebluntness.com if you want to continue to explore this topic and learn more about the culinary side, the industry, as well as just, more information about your own health and well-being through cannabis and psychedelics.
Okay, Miguel.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Larry, for having us on the show. If you want to learn more about 99 Floor, follow us on Instagram. Come to one of our dinners and see what we do.
Thank you, Miguel. Hawaii Mike.
Thank you guys for having me. Again, I think food is the future of consumption. Food is a universal language because everybody eats. I think it's one of the safest and best ways to consume. And again, if you want to learn about what we do, you can follow us at Chef for Hire. And it's HIGHER, not HIRE. And come visit us as well.
Okay. Fred.
I don't think we're dealing with a drug anymore. I think we're dealing with an ingredient. And I think it needs to be respected and dealt with appropriately. And I think you need to start to have the conversations, like I mentioned, with your associations, with your distribution partners, et cetera, and continue the conversation.
Okay, after seeing the reception from the audience, and we have two people that still want to ask questions, I think I see the country is going to pot 2. But we will pick this up in the next quarter. Thank you everyone for coming here, and a special thanks to Harrison, because without Harrison, Miguel and Hawaii Mike would not be here. And I think a lot of the audience. So thanks again, Harrison, for your work and helping us with this. Thanks to you, audience, for being here, asking questions, showing interest. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with a coffee with, and I believe, because my mind is like a sieve, I believe it's going to be Coffee with David Burke. And it should be an interesting session. That being said, I only have 2 more things to say. Everybody, stay positive, test negative, and hope to see you in 2 weeks. Bye now, folks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.